So welcome back to Favorite from Friday. For the first case for this week, we are going to Ohio. We have another serial killer. This case, of course, goes back to the early 1900s, and our serial killer is not as well known, but the motive definitely is interesting. Let me know if you've heard of this case. Sources now below as always. I'm gonna quit my rambling and let's go and get started. So your girl Martha, she was said to have been born on April 18th, 1884, and was said to have been one of three. So in 1906, she winds up meeting her husband, Albert Wise, who was born May 6, 1870. So he's like 14, almost 14 years older than her, which that was pretty common back then. That was pretty common back then to marry somebody with a little bit of age gap from you. Basically, they meet at a social event where apparently women were expected to cook a meal, and then guys were to bid on said meal, and whoever bidded on the highest on that particular meal, y'all supposed to go on a date. And I guess the date worked out because they wanted to get married. And Albert actually owned a farm, and I guess that pretty much excited her because, back then, you had a farm, your boy got money. And so then they get married, and unfortunately, even though she was pregnant, because obviously we don't have, like, the obvious restrictions, like, oh, you can't heavy lift while you're pregnant like we do now. He made her work intense labor even while pregnant, and was said to have been verbally abusive. So it's obviously, you can imagine she hated that marriage. They would have one son together named Walter. He was born August 14th and died apparently September 24th. So he died as an infant, like literally like a month old, if that. So that's tragic. But they did wind up having 4 surviving children. And their names are Everett, Gertrude, Kenneth, and Lester. Now, I don't have like an obituary, date of birth, or death on any of them. But obviously you can imagine this is the early 1900s, so all of them have since passed. The only reason we have a date of birth and death on Walter is because he died as an infant. Now, for some reason, Martha, out of nowhere, she would just start, like, attending funerals for random people. And apparently, her Scrabble, where this takes place at, apparently it's not a small town. And these are people that, like, she didn't even know, or it wasn't like she was acquainted with, like, the family. If there was a funeral within a certain mile radius, Martha's going. And whenever, obviously asked, like, why are you doing this? Because you're going to people's funerals you don't know. And it's not like you work for the morgue or anything like that, or the funeral home where it's taking place at. She would just say that, oh, I like funerals. So then it said that Albert, the husband, he eventually died in May of 1922. Doesn't say how he died, it just says he died. So then it said that at this point, Martha is going on a mental decline. And it said that she's going around burning barns and buildings around town. As you can imagine, not everybody got insurance. So this is messing some people's lifestyle up, as you can imagine. 2 years later, she's been a widow. Don't know how she's been able to take care of these kids. Because, Walter's dead, but apparently she's been able to. I assume the family was helping. Because a lot of places didn't want to accept women for, like, employment back then. It didn't say how she was able to take care of these kids. But I guess apparently she was able to. So, 2 years later, she meets this guy named Walter Johns. Who apparently sources are saying that, like, he was an employee of the farmer that had the property next to them. So he didn't own the property, but he was an employee of. And apparently Walter already had 5 kids, and he was married. But apparently they, obviously, you learn things from these murder stories, that ain't stopping them just because you married. So the family obviously forbids them from getting together, even though Martha's a whole adult. And basically, apparently it was because he was a worker, and you're kind of marrying down instead of up. You're already a woman and you can't work. If you're going to marry somebody, at least marry somebody that has something to their name. So then apparently Walter would move to Cleveland, Ohio, and it said that they never saw each other ever again. That's what most sources are saying. So then Martha, she's pissed because her whole family's like, yeah, you can't marry him. Even if he wasn't married, even if he had kids, like, you still can't marry somebody, like, technically below your status because you have all this land and he doesn't really have anything to his name, like I said. Well, she goes and buys arsenic. Now, back then, apparently arsenic, a bunch of people were using it for poison and shit. So if you bought arsenic, we need to have record of you buying, like, when did you buy it, how much you bought it, your name, I think you have to show ID. And the source, like all these other serial killers, she tells the pharmacist that the arsenic is going to be used for rats. Because there were people who genuinely had rats, and they were using it for that purpose, which is the intended purpose of us even selling this. So then she invites the whole family over for Thanksgiving. A good chunk of them come. Of course, she puts the arsenic in the food. Everybody gets sick, but only her mother dies. Her mother doesn't die like that day. Her mom dies like 2 weeks later on December 13th. And then her death is ruled like the flu. So fast forward to February 1925. So a whole 2 months later, her aunt and her aunt's husband, the aunt's husband had died. And so they had 4 children that they both had left behind. Luckily, all 4 children survived, but were sadly paralyzed, which will come into play later. So within a year, it said that she poisoned 18 family members. Obviously, I can imagine some of these family members dropping dead, and Martha's like the common cause. Police are eventually going to catch up and realize that Martha's a common cause, as they did. So then we get to trial. Walter, her little lover, the one that she didn't run away with, he apparently testifies against her and apparently wants nothing to do with her. Well, Martha, because apparently they have to test whether or not she was even mentally sane to stand trial, because obviously if she's not sane enough, we're not going to put her on trial, because you know that's messed up. And she was found sane enough to go on trial. She had, remember I said she was one of 3, and apparently her sister, Edith, who's supposed to testify in favor of her, apparently had committed suicide before she could. Edith's husband, so Martha's brother-in-law, it said that he got sick soon afterwards. Obviously, I imagine Martha's in prison, so she didn't poison him, but you know, you never know. And the sources mentioned that, so I just thought that was interesting. And it said that Martha would spend her last days, obviously, at a reform prison for women. And it said that she actually thrived there. And so, one little thing about Walter is said, this is not confirmed, because, yeah, but it is definitely interesting. I believe that the Walter in the story died March 22nd, 1951, because I did find an obituary with that name, and he is apparently buried in Cleveland. And remember I said he had moved to Cleveland before he had passed, and while Cleveland is like a big city, it is possible that that's our Walter. So that's not guaranteed, but just thought I should mention that. And so apparently Martha apparently was released at age 79, and there's like one source that says like, oh, she came back the next day, whereas most sources are saying that she actually came back 3 days later, because apparently none of her surviving family wanted anything to do with her, because, you know, you kind of was over killing off the family, so who said you're not going to try to kill us off, even though she's almost 80? And so this included apparently nursing homes. You know, if the family don't want you, we put you in a nursing home. But even the nursing homes were like, hell no. So like I said, that she went back. Apparently they let her, and she finished out her days there. And then apparently it said that she died April 28th, 1971 at 88. So she spent 9 more years there. So yeah, that was definitely an interesting one, considering that our prisoner voluntarily went back to prison, even though she'd been released. And so definitely what you think down below. There's people saying that Martha had mental difficulties, and that's why she snapped and pretty much killed her family, like you saying I can't go with Walter, now I'm a whole adult. That's pretty much like the last straw. Definitely know what you think down below. I cover fatal females every Friday. I cover 3 cases every Friday. Subscribe for more fatal females, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
So if I play dead, will you regret everything that you did, that you said? I don't think you understand what you're doing, and my heart's black and blue from the bruising. I feel like when I'm with you I'm losing. I feel like you think that this amusing, sitting there gaslighting and confusing. Was it me? Is it me? Am I deluded? I'm the one who's always sorry, the conclusion, even though I offer all of the solutions.